Guys, it's a privilege to be here with you tonight. Clearly, Charlie videoed that before the epic beard came into play for him, but we'll give him grace on that. I just had to throw the beard thing in because that was the theme. But anyway, I'm glad to be here with you guys tonight. Here's what my portion of this is where do we go from here? What do we do with all this stuff? How do we integrate our faith? If there's a question that I think we'll kind of meander through, it's this. When we interact with those around us, do we diminish them or do we enrich them? When you interact with this community, with your family, with your work, are you enriching or are you diminishing? About a month ago, some of our small group team had the opportunity to go out to California for what was called a small group pastor conference. It literally meant we were just getting away because it was so cold here. We needed to go somewhere warm, and we just needed some space to think about what God was doing. In the midst of that, one of the workshops was really cool, and I think it lands itself well for us. Saddleback had hired a husband and wife who are researchers. They literally do full-time work researching different things. So Saddleback said, hey, we're interested in workplace small groups. So what can you do for us? So they interviewed over 1,700 volunteer leaders, small group leaders, different leaders within that Saddleback Church network, and they came up with some really interesting findings, and none of them had anything to do with workplace small groups. But I think that they have to do something for us tonight. Here's one of the findings that they had is that most of us as Christ followers really do want to integrate our faith with our work. And most of us have really no idea how to do this well. We're winging it. We're kind of shooting from the hip here. And most of us try to do nothing at all unless we're doing it with integrity. It's got to feel honest. It's got to feel real. We need to be authentic in the way that we do it. So there's this phrase that they threw out there is that integration is all about integrity. And that meant something for me in a number of different ways. It brought me back to last year's Faith and Work, primarily in 2 Timothy 2:15, where Paul is saying this, do your best to present yourself to God as one approved, a worker who has no need to be ashamed, rightly handling the word of truth. Integration is all about integrity. So how do we enrich the lives of those around us with integrity? Here's a quick story that may or may not make sense at the beginning, but on Saturday, I was driving down Main Street by ISU, and I was like the third car back from the stoplight. I'm just kind of minding my own business, but the guy in front of me, the pickup, gets out. And so I'm like, what's this all about? He starts walking to the car in front of him. I'm like, okay, this is really going to be something interesting because you just don't see that. Well, he's trying to motion and get the attention of the person there, and he finally hits the trunk. And I'm like, what is happening? This is awesome and not awesome. Well, I finally figured out the gas cap is hanging out of the car in the front. So he's trying to get the person's attention. So he finally does, points to it, gives a thumbs up, goes back, sits down in the truck, and then 15 seconds later, the light turns green. So I'm thinking about this. I'm like, oh, he's just being helpful. That's good intentions. But what happened was then that person had to drive off to a parking lot, get out, and the guy could have just put the gas cap on and done this, and it was good, right? Here's my point in that, because the analogy falls apart pretty quickly after this, is that we have right intentions, and we often don't figure out right ways to implement them. It has to do with integration of faith in some way or another. So there's this guy that I've been reading, Alan Fadling, and he has written his book, The Unhurried Leader. So I'm slowly reading this book, right? You're with me? Good. But this quote I think is helpful for us. Each of us have been planted in particular places with particular people with whom we might bless and benefit by sharing something good that God has been giving to us. Particular places, particular people, so that we might share something good that we've received from Jesus. So how do we do it? Back to the research, the Rydell strategy. They came up with 4 findings, 4 levels of integration that I think we might resonate with that might help us integrate our faith. The first is this. It's called signaling. And so the best way I can describe this is, in our context, it's wearing our Eastview swag, right? So it's a sweatshirt or something that says Eastview. It could be like a Jesus swag, like a T-shirt, like his pain, your gain kind of deal. That's way back from the 80s. So some of you get that, some of you don't. But it's literally, maybe it's just even putting your Bible or something that has to do with Jesus out on your desk. So what you're doing is you're signaling to people around you, hey, there's something Jesus see about me, and so maybe you should ask me a question. And then you just sit and wait, right? I don't know what happens in that, but that's called signaling. So that happens. That's one level of integration. The next level of integration is called community finding. So this is literally where you're in your workplace, your environment, your organization, you're finding other Christ followers. You're trying to figure out who are like-minded people. And then you gather. You might pray in the morning time. You might have some lunch. You might even get into a Bible study. You might even use social media. So like something like LinkedIn, you might put like ECC in there, or like the Eastview E, or like a tagline, ridiculous love, or something like that. That might not be a good thing. Don't put that in there. But what you're trying to do is connect with other believers. That's another level of integration, saying, hey, we're in this together. Let's not be the 87% that's disengaged, but let's do this together. You're huddling, right? That's another level of integration. The third one is called ministering, literally meaning you're meeting the needs of people around you. You're tangibly seeing them, and then you're meeting them in your workplace. Now, that might be a little bit harder to figure out, but what it means is you're just demonstrating, you're living it out. Here's an example that comes to mind. One of our small group leaders' name is Randy. Actually, I saw him running this afternoon on Shelbourne. But he works at a place in town that's going through lots and lots of changes. And he personally had to figure out for 3 months, do I have a job? If I have a job, where am I going to have this job at? If I'm moving or not, what's going to happen next? Who do I get to supervise? What's it going to be like? Well, he's gone through all that, and now he gets to figure out how to help other people go through that same process. So he has a question to ask. How do I integrate my faith in the midst of such craziness and chaos as the times that he finds himself in? But listen to this quote, because I think it exemplifies what it means to minister. He says this: my role and calling, I have found, is to shepherd those around me. Literally to pray daily for them, to enter into a conversation that moves past work, that moves past tasks, and into the realm of life that they're really thinking about. What's my future? So I know that my role is to guide and direct them to something deeper. Maybe it's an answer, but ultimately it's for them to see and know that Jesus is real. That's what it means to minister and integrate your faith. The fourth and final level that we found, or that Rydell found, is that it's witnessing. So if you remember the Fadling quote, particular place, particular people, so that we can share something good that you've received from God. It's literally in the midst of those ministry moments saying, here's what I know to be true. Here's what I know to be true in my own story. Here's who Jesus is and who he's been for me. It's witnessing in those ways. If there's an organization that does this well, it's Encounter. So hundreds of college students a year are being trained to do this very thing in every corner of the globe, whatever they find themselves, to influence and impact the world around them. And that is exactly what we want small groups to do. We want small groups to gather and grow and give, and then go out and impact and enrich the world around you. But here's a problem. We don't do it. So not too long ago, we took an RUN snapshot, and there's some staggering information here. Here's one of them. 3 in every 4 of us don't get past the signaling and community integration phases. 3 out of every 4 of us don't move into that witnessing and that ministering level of integration of our faith. That's just what we filled this out. And so if we are to enrich the community around us, our workplaces, how are we to do that if we're not willing to move into those areas and figure out what God has for us? So as I just have a few moments left, let me suggest a couple things for us from a small group standpoint. The first thing is this, that small groups is your rapid intervention team. Here's what I mean for that. If I had more time, I'd unpack this, but I have the privilege of having 2 firefighters in our small group, and they go through training about every 6 months. It's called Rapid Intervention Training, RIT. And it's really about when a colleague goes down in the line of duty in a fire, how do you rescue and get them out? First of all, there's something for us here because nobody goes into a fire alone. That should say something alone about our work in small groups. We should never let somebody go alone into their work without praying and covering them. But really what this is about is training. How do you get somebody out? And this is fascinating to me. On average, it takes between 8 and 12 firefighters to rescue a downed colleague. We say that the optimal number of small group members is 8 to 12. I'm not joking. We just say that. And so there's something powerful about that. Here's what I'm trying to say is that your small group is poised to be your rapid intervention team. Is your small group utilizing itself in that way? Is your small group launching you out? Is it praying for you on a daily basis to have conversations with people? That's the first thing that I want to say. The second thing is this, It's a really simple process, but your small group can adopt this on a week in and week out basis. And it took this from a missional community mindset, but it's called the 3-2-1 approach. And it's this: 3 hours a week with Jesus. So it's 25.3 minutes a day. 3 hours a week with Jesus. 2 hours a week at your work doing ministering and witnessing conversations. And then 1 hour a week gathering back together, praying and encouraging each other, enriching yourself so that you can be sent out to do that again. 3 hours a week with Jesus, 2 hours a week intentionally having ministering moments, witnessing conversations with people in your work, and then 1 hour a week coming back together, talking, and getting ready to go and do that again. What happens if we do that in our small groups? What happens in this community if, as we gather, grow, give, and go, that we're preparing ourselves to enrich the world around us? Let me remind us of 2 Timothy 2:15. Let me personalize it. Eastview, do your best to present yourself to God as one approved, a worker who has no need to be ashamed, rightly handling the word of truth. So let me ask this question again. When you interact with others, will you enrich them or will you diminish them? Guys, thanks so much.